Ghost Reaper is an interesting card. You usually see it a lot in tier 0 formats, but not really in diverse formats. And I think you already know this, but we're headed into another tier 0 format, this time including Kashtiras. And of course, thanks to our fellow friends from the OCG, we already know what's going on there, so we already have an idea of what to expect over here, and it's going to be really dark. Because of how insanely powerful Kashtira tier elements was, and still is in the OCG, people were actually main decking Ghost Reaper to counter it. So that leaves us with today's topic of this video. What are the best targets for Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries going into the Photon Hypernova format? But of course, my man, before we can go any further, could you just be a giant chat and smash both the like and subscribe button for me? I'd really appreciate it. You are the best. I absolutely love you. And now let's proceed. Alright, so first things first, the most obvious one, tier elements Kid Kalos. No shit, it loses pretty hard to Ghost Reaper. Without Kid Kalos, they will struggle to search their missing piece. They might actually miss a lot of the extenders that they need on the field, and it's going to be much harder for them to mill cards, which means that they're going to be generating way less advantage. And also, depending on how and where you utilize it, you might make one of their tier effects in the graveyard to fusion summon actually fizzle, aka resolve with no effect. Or sometimes you might force them to fusion summon a monster that they have absolutely no intention to summon, such as Garura, Muddragon, or Kaleido Heart. The drawback to Reaper is that if their hand is the absolute nuts, they can still technically play through it, just like we're seeing in the OCG right now. Kid Kalos is banned, and the deck is still broken. Oh, and if they can send Tier Elements Crime to the graveyard, they can recycle back a banished Tier Elements monster into the hand or extra deck. Therefore, they can recycle back a Kid Kalos and play as if nothing ever happened. And nothing else is really worth hitting against Tier Elements because they have way too many options, way too many backup plans. So Kid Kalos, I want to say, is probably the only good one. And against Kashtira, though, you have two options, but they're not really that good. You could actually Reaper their ShangriLa and also make them lose access to Rise Heart, but the issue is that they keep the level 7 monsters on the field. Therefore, if they still have Unicorn and Fenrir, you are kind of screwed. And this is absolutely awful for you if you're playing tier elements yourself, because they will go Unicorn effect to make you lose one of your Kid Kalos or one of your other good cards, and you're going to be starting with a huge disadvantage on top of them still having two really powerful cards to deal with. And furthermore, since they didn't commit to the ShangriLa yet, they still have access to Rise Heart, and then they can summon it, and then transform it into a level 7, and hard make the Rise Heart that way. So it didn't even matter that you Reaper the ShangriLa, they can still make the Rise Heart the hard way. Oh, and not to mention that Kashtira Papias, when banished, can recycle back a banished Kashtira card to the hand, so it doesn't really matter whatever you Reaper because they always have a backup plan. Alternatively, you could actually hold your Reaper for the Rise Heart when they summon the ShangriLa, but there are still issues to that. First of all, the Rise Heart can still banish the Big Bang from the deck in order to summon the Unicorn or Fenrir underneath the ShangriLa, and then they can still go Diablosis in order to look at your extra deck and make you lose a card, and then make you lose even more zones with ShangriLa, and that's not really fun. So in other words, there's actually no solution against Kashtira. If you have Reaper, it's basically just a neg 1 the majority of the time because they can always do something about it. And even if you successfully manage to Reaper them multiple times, it doesn't really matter too much because their main deck monsters are way more than enough to actually make them win a game on their own. Now moving on to another deck that actually does lose pretty hard to Reaper, and that would be Sprite. The deck does have a few choke points to Reaper, but you have to be extra careful and very smart about it. What I mean to say is that timing really matters, and also the card that you're Reapering really matters because you have two options here. You can hit the Gigantic Sprite or the Sprite Elf. Gigantic Sprite is a starter, and Sprite Elf is an extender. If they go into a sprint and then send the Angler to summon Double Beaver and you Reaper the Gigantic Sprite here, they can still Xyz summon Mannequin Cat using the two Beavers and then revive back your Reaper to target it and then summon a Blue or Jet from the deck. So in other words, Reapering the Gigantic really didn't do anything here because they were still able to get their engine started, on top of having a bounce back with the sprint because it is an interruption on the field. Oh, and to make matters worse, you didn't hit their grind game at all because they still have a Spread Elf in the extra deck. So in other words, you can't just Unga Bunga and activate whatever card you want and hope that it works out. No. You actually have to use your brain, unfortunately. And God, we all know how garbage Yu-Gi-Oh players are at actually doing that. Here's the thing though, if you know for a fact that your opponent plays Mannequin Cat or at least has access to it, you never ever Reaper the Gigantic, but rather the Elf. Again, by doing that, you really cripple their grind game so that post turn 1, they really don't do too much. But yeah, if Reaper does gain in popularity, Mannequin Cat will start seeing more play in Sprite if people are not already playing that card in every single build. I don't think they are though, especially the Gishki build. Oh, and Reaper sucks against Flunderies, so I'm not even gonna bother. Oh, and I'll be honest with you guys, Reaper is not really good against rogue decks, not because rogue decks don't really lose to Reaper, but because you're gonna be needing way too many cards in order to cover a lot of ground, and that's just not really optimal for your extra deck. So in other words, even though Reaper does have a lot of options, I strongly recommend it to only use it against tier elements and Sprite. Anyways, that's pretty much all I had to say for this video. Guys, I want to hear your thoughts about Ghost Reaper in the comment section below, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll see you guys very soon. Peace.